how important it is for the well-being of mothers. Just on a personal note, I'd like to say before Sarah starts, I've been very, very lucky to be in this room because everything that so far seemed to have some sort of relevance. I'll get somebody in to sort that.
Oh no, sorry about my accent.
We were a bit glitchy. But I have also run groups like this in the past on the Isle of Man, about 15 years ago now, with pregnant women, and then when their babies were young, and the idea was to have children, the women come to do singing when they were pregnant, and then their children would come, and whilst they were preschool until they were 4. And it was a marvellous transformational thing to do, and I'm very excited to see how it's working in Ireland now, and just what an important effect it has in the community. We're very blessed to have Sarah tell us all about it.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. Excuse me. So, my name is Sarah McCarthy, and I am a Doctor of Arts candidate at Victoria College London. I live in Cork in Ireland and carry out my research in an Irish context. I've worked for many years as a community musician with different groups, including mothers and their children. I was lucky enough to actually present at the festival last year, but I just had some just finished data collection then, so I'm really happy to be here to talk about my findings. So my research is focused on how group singing can impact women during the perinatal period, which starts at conception and goes right through to the baby's first birthday. So, I better explain my title, which is a Meitheal for mothers. So Meitheal is a word in the Irish language which doesn't have a direct English translation like lots of Irish words. So it's, but the term bonding social capital comes very close.
I need to go and check that cable.
Okay. Close. So bonding social capital is the really strong connections and relationships that can be formed between people of similar backgrounds. It can have mutual benefits, including social and personal support, and may contribute to overall well-being. So in a similar way, I hope that my research will result in the formation of a new type of community group where through singing, new mothers can invest in their well-being, self-efficacy and more. So there's 2 distinct aims to what I want to do. The first is to increase mothers' perceptions of their maternal singing and creative self-efficacy through the medium of an infant-directed song repertoire education program. In other words, teaching mothers how to use nursery rhymes and songs in a practical sense for their babies in daily life. And the second aim is to increase their perceptions of well-being through the medium of adult-directed group singing and opportunities to connect socially. So here are my research questions. So the first one is, how do perinatal women in Ireland perceive their needs in relation to well-being and maternal singing and creative self-efficacy? And secondly, what specific features of a mother-focused community singing programme do perinatal women in Ireland identify as important for meeting their needs and fostering participation? So just a quick rattle through a bit review. So the term matrescence was first coined by anthropologist Dan Raphael in 1975, and it refers to the transition to motherhood as a developmental phase akin to adolescence, marked by significant physical, emotional and hormonal changes. And this period often brings about a shift in a woman's self-identity, sometimes resulting in a feeling of dislocation or disconnection from her pre-motherhood identity. And this can increase feelings of loneliness and isolation, and really amplify the need for support. So why communal singing? Well, communal singing offers a range of psychological and physiological benefits. It can reduce stress by lowering levels of cortisol, boost mood and bonding by increasing endorphins and oxytocin, which is the so-called love hormone. It's also the hormone that's really key in breastfeeding. These hormonal effects are significantly stronger during group singing than solo singing, and it can result in a reduction of anxiety and stress and an increase in positive mood and emotions. There's loads of other reasons why communal singing is so valuable to perinatal women, but I'll go through a few more as I go through the presentation. So the PERMA model is a positive psychology framework for understanding and achieving well-being and particularly flourishing. So It was developed by positive psychologist Martin Seligman in 2011, and the acronym PERMA stands for Positive Emotion, Engagement, Relationships, Meaning and Accomplishment. And today I'm going to look at some of my findings through the lens of the PERMA model. For the general population in Ireland, as well as mothers, we know that loneliness is a real and significant concern. In 2022, the European Commission carried out an EU loneliness survey. So there was over 27,000 respondents in every EU member state, and it was called the EU Loneliness Survey. And Ireland came out as the ranked first as the loneliest country in Europe, with over 20% of people identifying as feeling lonely most or all of the time, which is just huge. And the EU average of the survey was 13%. So there's a really, really significant loneliness issue in Ireland at the moment. Postnatal depression affects between 10 to 15% of mothers in Ireland and the UK. However, attending mother and baby groups can help support mothers' mental health. And when compared to other mother and infant activities, communal singing results in faster and more significant improvements in postnatal depression. Oops. Well, now you can see that I did something on the screen. Okay. Yeah. So, I'm select. Okay. So, additionally, social support is really key in reducing maternal stress, anxiety, and depression, and it enhances the overall motherhood experience. So, it's really vital that mothers have access to appropriate social supports in the community. So, when it comes to social bonding, we know that singing is really effective at accelerating social connection between strangers, and this is known as the icebreaker effect. As participants feel a sense of closeness without the need for personal knowledge of other members of the group. Synchronous music making promotes cooperation, belonging, and pro-social behaviour, and in mother and baby singing groups, this peer support can take the form of something we call comparison support, which is shared advice and encouragement between mothers, enhancing maternal self-efficacy. And intimate mothering is learning from a more experienced mother in a safe, validating space to explore and affirm one's new identity as a mother. So, one point just before I move on to self-efficacy, it's really important to recognise the role of the infant in communal maternity singing groups, because babies are not passive bystanders in this setting, and they actively influence the mother through their interaction and feedback. So live multimodal singing, which is where you're singing and doing other things like actions or whatever, this has been shown to be one of the most attractive and stimulating activities that a mother can share with their baby. Infants are actually born innately musical, and they're ready to interact with their caregivers from birth. And the infant has a sophisticated musical ear, and the sound of their mother's voice, regardless of whether she can sing in tune or not, that's really important, has been shown to be very highly desirable to our baby. And so we can see why maternal singing groups can be rewarding for the infant as well as the mother. So self-efficacy then is and refers to an individual's belief in their ability to complete tasks, overcome obstacles, and achieve their goals in relation to a specific task or area in their life. So maternal self-efficacy is a mother's confidence in her parenting abilities. Singing self-efficacy is our belief in our ability to sing well. And in Western society, singing musical ability is often seen as an innate trait linked to elite musicianship, but singing skills can be developed in adults with the right help and encouragement. So many adults avoid singing due to past negative experiences, especially in childhood, usually from school or maybe a choir master or something. Many adults avoid singing due to negative, so the criticism and lack of support can be foster a negative self-image as a singer. So many adults label themselves as tone deaf, and this perception, along with social anxiety and really very little opportunity to sing as an adult, can prevent them from developing their skills further. So amusia is a really rare condition that involves difficulty with pitch discrimination. So this is true tone deafness. So, but in actual fact, less than 1.5% of the global population has amusia. So, and is therefore truly tone deaf. So we can see that maybe our negative self-perceptions are often inaccurate. And then finally, creative self-efficacy is a belief our belief to engage in and succeed at creative tasks. So this study explored how mothers perceive their own creativity and how, their perceptions of mothering as a creative act. Okay, so here's my methodology. So I used a pragmatic mixed methodology design. I used an explanatory and sequential design to carry out quantitative and qualitative data collection. So first I began with an internet questionnaire in January 2024, and then following on from that, semi-structured interviews were conducted to explore the themes of well-being and self-efficacy further. And then finally, a randomized control trial was carried out with a cohort of mother and infants in May and June of 2024. So just the respondents for each stage had to be over 18, they had to be a mother of an infant aged 0 to 12 months, and they had to be living on the island of Ireland. So convenience and snowball sampling was used throughout. So here's just some of the questionnaire demographics. So the sample size was 187. It's important, I think, to point out that this is what could be classified as a weird sample, it's down the bottom, which is white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. So this was a phrase or a theory that was coined in 2010 to describe the population most commonly sampled by researchers in experimental behavioural sciences. But compared to national data, the sample is representative. So what's that? So I'll just have a look at the interview demographics. My sample size was 13. 13 mothers participated, 7 of whom were first-time mums. And the interviews were carried out either in person or via Zoom. So to analyse the data, I used a Braun and Clark's 6-phase approach to reflexive thematic analysis of qualitative data. And so the stages are familiarization, coding, initial themes, reviewing themes, and defining, and then writing up. So here are the 5 themes that I came up with from the interview portion. I'm going to talk about all these in the final section, but yeah, so you can see there around loneliness, identity, creativity, singing confidence, and then spaces refers to the actual spaces where these community singing groups can take place. So here's a little about the feasibility study. It ran for 7 weeks. The control group had 45-minute sessions. It was infant-directed singing only. When the sessions were over, they just had to pack up and leave. Then in the experimental group, which was the same size, this was much longer. There were 90-minute sessions. There was adult-directed singing and infant-directed singing. And I guess I should clear up a little what that means. Adult-directed singing is singing that's for adults, not nursery rhymes. So in this group, we did actually a lot of pop songs from the kind of late 90s and early 90s when the mothers were roughly teenagers, young adults. And then the last 30 minutes of each session was just like tea, coffee, and maybe little snacks. There was like a chat, loads of time to chat. I'm going to talk about meditation a little bit later, but I also used with the infant-directed singing, I taught the mothers ways in which they could use the nursery rhymes and songs in a practical sense with their baby. So we call these transitional routine songs because some of them are, say, sleep songs, bath time songs, nappy changing songs, stuff like that, and have these songs in day-to-day life. That's okay. It works if I tap it. And then finally, I set up a Google Classroom where I had like links to other support, other groups in the area, recipes. Like I made the little snacks for the tea and coffee and stuff, and they asked me for the recipes, so I put them up there. And there was like an open chat. They also had a WhatsApp group. So we did have this sample again was a weird sample like the others, but it was not fully representative when compared to the national data. So it was a relatively homogeneous group, highly educated, employed mothers, and it limits the generalizability of the study. But the data collected does provide some important feedback and some important context. So now I'm going to talk about well-being and my findings. So just a definition of well-being, a combination of feeling good and functioning well, the experience of positive emotions, such as happiness and contentment, as well as the development of potential, control, sense of purpose, positive relationships, so a lot of what I talked about in the Burma model. So it's sustainable and allows the individual or population to develop and thrive, and thriving is a really important part of that. So the first element of PERMA is positive emotion. But today I'd actually like to talk about the absence of positive emotion and how this was experienced by participants. So 40% of the questionnaire respondents identified as having experienced a mental illness in their lifetime. So I found some interesting things in relation to those who had experienced a mental illness and those who had not, in terms of building relationships with other mothers. So over on the far left there, you can see that 40% of mothers with a history of mental illness felt they couldn't talk about their life as a mother with their friends who did not have children, against 16% of mothers who did not have a mental illness. So yeah, I don't know if that's easy to see, but the blue is those with a mental illness and the orange is without. 18.7% of the mothers with mental illness felt like other mothers were not interested in meeting up with them or socializing with them, compared to 8.7% of those without. And then finally, 60% of the mothers with a mental illness did not know how to go about making friends with other mothers, compared to 32% of those who did. On the right-hand side here, I have some interview quotes. So, in the interview analysis, feelings of loneliness and isolation in motherhood came across really strongly in all participants. So every participant identified with loneliness in motherhood, even if they didn't experience it themselves, but that was actually only 2 people. Many participants described the early months of motherhood as profoundly lonely, often linked to long periods at home with their baby, and intensified by a partner's return to work. And even with strong spousal or family support, women frequently felt emotionally misunderstood and sought support from other mothers. Limited opportunities for social interaction and shifts in pre-existing friendships further contributed to this feeling of disconnection, and many mothers expressed a clear need to form new bonds with other mothers who could relate to their new experiences. In terms of the feasibility study, I found that the experimental group, in terms of well-being, experienced a bit of a temporarily improved in their well-being post-study, but this was declined at follow-up, whereas the control group didn't show any significant changes in their well-being. Next is engagement. So there's been some of the other talks today talked about mindfulness and meditation. Engagement is about flow and the loss of self-consciousness when we're involved in an activity that absorbs our full attention. So the reason I was interested in meditation and meditation practices was it's been shown to be a positive practice to engage in, as it increases our self-compassion and compassion for others, can help with emotional regulation and attachment as well with infants. So I wanted to find out what participants' perceptions and experiences of meditation were. So it was a bit of a mixed bag. The questionnaire data found that almost half of the mothers had never meditated. Of those who did have meditation experience, 85% did no longer meditated. 52% of those who no longer meditated were interested in trying again. 30% were unsure. Of those who had never meditated, here on the very far right, 37% would be interested, some were unsure, so it was a really mixed bag on meditation. Overall, over the whole course of the study, I found kind of meditation was a thing people could kind of take or leave. In the interview process, the theme of inconsistency came across in the interview data. Majority of interview respondents had tried meditation at some point, but like really briefly in a yoga class, Pilates, or a lot had tried it for the very first time in hypnobirthing during their pregnancy. It's a very recent experience of it. But almost all of them did not continue their practice. And I think Audrey at the top says why. She says it quite well. Every free minute is taken up with her baby. Meditation was seen as valuable, but practice was sporadic, and having the time to practice obviously was a barrier. And Hazel here was someone who had never tried meditation, so at the bottom, many of those who hadn't tried it expressed a conditional openness to trying, and guided meditation seemed to be much more desirable than unguided. So in terms of in the feasibility study, a higher number had actually tried meditation before, 67% of all the mothers. And what I wanted to do in the feasibility study was actually include a meditation practice at the end of the sessions to kind of wind things down and offer anyone who hadn't tried meditation before the opportunity to try loving kindness meditation, which is a type of meditation that encourages self-compassion and compassion for others. But the babies were really loud and they were just crying and screaming, and it didn't work at all. So what I did instead was I offered an audio recording of the meditation in the group classroom where the experimental group could access it. However, only one person used it out of 13, so it wasn't really, I don't think, something that people were terribly found desirable. So next I just want to look at relationships. So relationships is about, in the PERMA model, is about having strong positive connections with others, and it also encompasses the idea that life is more meaningful and enjoyable when shared with other people. So over here on the left is the questionnaire responses. So I'll just look at a few of them. In terms of peer support, the top one there is they were asked to agree with or not with statements. So this is the first one is I would like to make friends with other mothers, but I don't know how to go about it. And that was 44.7% of respondents. Next, they were asked if they would like to build a village. The term village is something we see a lot, especially on social media, but it comes from the saying it takes a village to raise a child, and the village is your support network of other mothers and other people. So yeah, they were asked if they'd like to build a village with other mothers for friendship and support. So 37.8 did, that's good. The next one was really interesting. So this statement is, other mothers I know seem to be so confident, like they know what they're doing. 75% agree with that. And there's a lot more in the literature around this, especially when it comes to social media. The idea that you look at someone else and they seem to be doing the same thing that you do, but so much better. They're coping really well, and it comes so easily to them. And there's this perception that other mothers are more confident or know exactly what they're doing. But in reality, when people are asked, we don't really feel like that at all. And then, what else do we have? Oh yes, so 66% then just really wanted to attend a group where they could get some peer support. And just the bottom two there are more about that their pre-existing friendships no longer meet their needs. That if they have friends, they're working during the week, they can't socialise with them, or they can't go to night with them anymore, stuff like that. So there's a desire to make new friends. So in terms of the interview cohort here on the right, okay, they also experienced or indicated a really strong desire to make social connection. All 13 respondents wanted to build a village with other mothers, and the peer connection and support of the village was seen important by itself and also for maternal mental health. Participants expressed a strong desire for connection and support, both with mothers who are have babies of a similar age for understanding, but also mothers, again, who are more experienced, who could offer some guidance and validation. This quote from Violet, I think, is actually really interesting, because this has come up a bit. So the presence and value of neighbours, as well as a sense of community connection, was highlighted as a common way of life when the participants were children, especially in rural areas. Some felt that this way of living no longer exists, and there was a certain sense of loss that this way of life does not exist for this generation of mothers. I think what Violet was talking about there was what came across was this idea that, like, when we were children, our mothers all helped each other out. You knew your neighbours helped you. We were all in it together, and now there's a feeling that we're all on our own, basically. So, yes, as we saw in the questionnaire data, interview participants spoke about wanting to make meaningful friendships with other mothers, but kind of struggling to know how to go about it. I think as Audrey says here, it's like you have so many other things to do and then you have to try and make new friends on top of that. That's very, very hard. So in the feasibility study, both groups saw increases of feelings of disconnection from their child, from their friends who didn't have children, but the experimental group showed a notable drop in insecurity about forming friendships with other mothers, while it remained high in the control group. Next, we'll talk about meaning. So, meaning refers to belonging to and serving something that you believe is bigger than yourself. So, in this instance, I want to talk about language, heritage, and culture in relation to meaning. So, over on the left-hand side here, we have a graph about this thing called songs of kin. So, that refers to songs that have really special meaning to us. And they are usually ones that are passed down to us by our parents, grandparents, or other relatives. It can also refer to songs that connect us to our culture and our heritage. So singing the songs to one's own baby can help create a connection with the past and may remind the mother of the emotional bond that she had with her own mother or caregiver. So in the questionnaire, respondents were asked if they had memories of being sung to as a child. And you see over here the blue one, so just almost 60% had memories of being sung to as a child. So of that cohort, they were asked, of these songs, do you sing any of the songs that you remember from your childhood to your baby? And you can see that 55.3% did, so quite a lot of them did pass on these songs of kin. Then over on the right hand side, I just wanted to know about what people thought about Irish culture and heritage and passing it on. So this one here, oh, it's like every time I point at it, stop. This one here, Irish folk songs. That basically was, do you sing Irish folk songs to your baby right now? And 61% did not. Then they were asked, is passing on your culture and heritage important to you? So 62% yes, and 31%, somewhat. Then they were asked, would you like to learn Irish folk songs? And quite a lot did. And then they were asked, would you like to learn Arani Shugega, meaning songs in Irish? And 68% did. So there seemed to be a good interest in connecting with culture and heritage through song. In the interview, of the interview cohort, I wanted to investigate meaning a little bit more in terms of identity. So participants talked of the huge emotional adjustment to motherhood, loss of personal freedom. Many expressed shock at the adjustment to early motherhood and how one could be completely unprepared for the reality of life with an infant, and how it can be a struggle to adjust to this way of life. And many identified matresses as a really vulnerable period in a woman's life. Some participants said they missed the social life they had before and the independence that they had before having a baby. Okay, the last letter in the Burma model is accomplishment. So, what I want to talk about here is accomplishment, and self-efficacy overlap quite significantly, and I'm going to talk about self-efficacy in a minute. So, I just want to talk a little bit about building a repertoire of infant songs, games, and nursery rhymes that can help feel a sense of maternal accomplishment. Basically, if you have lots of songs and rhymes that you can use at your baby to improve your maternal self-efficacy. So over here on the left, in the questionnaire, respondents were asked how many children's songs do you currently know. So, most mothers do at least some songs, and knew at least 6. But despite this, 87% of respondents wanted to learn more. They didn't feel they had enough. And then in the feasibility study, because obviously part of the feasibility, a good bit of the feasibility study was learning repertoire, was learning infant-directed songs. So approximately, at baseline, 70% of mothers said they knew some songs, but this increased to over 90% post-intervention, and it remained high with follow-up as well. So beliefs in the ability to improve one's own singing skills also improved, especially in the experimental group, while the idea that singing is just this innate gift that you're born with it or you're not, that declined in both groups as well. So we're going to move on to singing self-efficacy. So I have a little word pad over here. So this was in the questionnaire. Respondents were asked to describe, it was a qualitative question, so they were asked to describe their feeling or their experience of singing before they had their baby. So, most, like I hope you can see that, but like singing choir, singing in the car, that all came out. Most respondents reported singing primarily for fun, often alone, in the car, shower, or around the house. They emphasised their love of music and singing, even if they didn't consider themselves to be very skilled singers. About a third of respondents had some experience of choir singing in school choirs or musical theatre as children. Less than 10% had experience of singing in church or other community choirs, and very few had taken singing lessons or had semi-professional or professional experience. A recurring theme was a lack of confidence to sing in front of others or in formal group settings, and about a fifth of the mothers described feeling intimidated by the musical ability of others and by not being able to read music. I should say as well that, like, in terms of experience of singing in church choirs and things like that, Ireland is predominantly Catholic and for many years, and church singing is not a common thing in the Catholic Church in Ireland. So there may be a choir who sings at church, but they decide to join. They sit in their own area and they decide to do that, but the congregation generally don't sing. So that wouldn't be, I mean, that's not surprising that a lot of people don't have choir experience in the church. So the interview, though, was really illuminating about this subject because the participants overwhelmingly described themselves as lacking confidence in their own singing ability and their voice. And many went further and described themselves as being extreme poor singers. What Isabella says here at the top, I'm absolutely hopeless. I wouldn't even sing. Like, I just hide away if I had to sing somewhere, was the tenor of a lot of the interview conversations. Many said they would not sing in groups publicly, and that solo singing was avoided at all costs. Most preferred to remain in the background. Possible reasons for low singing self-efficacy include discouragement across the lifespan. So being asked to mime words or step away from a microphone as a child by a teacher, that came up quite a lot. And then Violet says, did it again. How she remembers as clear as day the teacher telling her to step away from the microphone. And that had, it just like, as we spoke about that in the interview, that had such a huge effect on her. Like, she was still really embarrassed, 20 or 30 years later. Many share the belief that confidence matters more than perceived talent, and that a lot of the participants equated confidence rather than skill as an actual measure of ability. So practice and exposure were seen to lead to confidence, and communal singing was viewed as a really good way to reduce pressure and boost confidence in individual singing self-efficacy. Many respondents, this I found interesting actually, many respondents equated their potential to sing or their self-efficacy with whether they came from a so-called musical family or not. Just, I'm not sure about here, but this is something that here in Ireland a lot of so-and-so is like they're musical people, we are not. Like that comes up a lot. So in the feasibility study, while both groups reported enjoying the singing, the experimental group experienced or displayed greater confidence in their singing abilities, and they were more likely to describe them singing as a positive and energizing experience compared to the control group. So then just creativity. So on the top left here, questionnaire respondents were asked, do you consider yourself a creative person? Then over on the top right, they were asked, do you think that being able to think on your feet is an important part of being a mother? A lot of them, the vast majority of them did. Then bottom left it says, do you think that becoming a mother has made you more creative as a person? That was very mixed, as you can see. And finally, they were asked, do you think you find it easy to come up with solutions to problems? And that was a mixed bag as well. So overall, mothers were positive about their creativity, and especially about being able to think on their feet. Those who considered themselves to be more creative more often found it easy to think of new solutions, and were more likely to think that motherhood contributed to creativity. And then in the interview process, I asked the respondents, what do you think a creative person is, or how do we identify a creative person? And here's a little bit of what they had to say about that. So personality was identified, energy, confidence, and expressiveness. This one came up a good bit, like the idea that somebody can imagine something in their head, they can imagine an end process, and see it all in their head, and then just go and do it. Aesthetics was really came up very strongly as well, especially about how people dress, how they wear their hair, and their makeup. So I'm just going to move on to my second research question, which is what specific features do perinatal women think are important? So in this one, this is an interview question, and basically they were asked, the project was explained, and this is what a class would look like, and would you like to join it? So would you like to attend the group? Would you like to come and sing and have tea and coffee, have a WhatsApp group, have support, etc.? So there was a really high interest in attending. This is, would you like to come to a group and have tea and a chat? And things like very 88.3. Would you like to be able to discuss issues that you were having as a mother with other mothers? That came across really strongly there. Would you like to be able to talk to other mothers and get advice about mothering and your baby? And that was huge, that was 94%. Would you like to make friendships from the group? Very high as well. And would you like to be involved in a WhatsApp group that functions outside of the group, and keeps going after the class? So then in the interview process, I was able to ask the interview participants, what specific aspects of a class do you think are important or not? And this really came down to how would you like to sit in the space? So like, second from the left there, it's like, would you like to sit in a line? Or would you like circular sitting? That was almost half and half. Would you like access to new material a week in advance so that you can practice it at home? So 8, this is sample size of 13 again. Would you like recordings of the audios of the songs that you learn in class so you can practice them at home? So 10. This one I thought, what if you hummed a song before you sang it? Would that make you more confident in singing it? Because people, were reporting being so nervous about singing in public. It didn't really matter by the looks of it. Would you like the facilitator to sing a song first on her own and then you sing it? That was very much welcomed. And then this was like, do you think vocal warm-ups would help you feel more confident in singing in a group? Finally, so I also asked the interview cohort, what genres of music do you like to sing? Like, what would you like to learn? So obviously pop was most important, or most favourable, and then country and Irish folk music were kind of equally matched there at 6, and then the others kind of less and less. Here, these are just closed questions that I asked the interview respondents that I've kind of talked about already. It's just interesting to see them here, but whether they've meditated before. It's good. Are you a confident singer? So 9 say no, 4 say yes. Do you think that singing is a skill that can be improved? That was very high as well. And then, would you like to be part of a village? And do you think that motherhood is a lonely time in someone's life? There was a unanimous agreement on that. And then the following one is just about problem solving and creativity. Do you think problem solving is a form of creativity? So finally then, just of what was enjoyed in the feasibility study, post-study, both groups, so the control and the experimental group both said they really enjoyed learning new songs and nursery rhymes. The control group preferred enjoying Irish folk, using the recordings, and the vast majority of the experimental group appreciated the tea aspect, tea and chats, and the opportunity to chat post session. Here's some references, and then I'm just going to finish up by saying, so I think the programme shows real potential. I think I need to scale it up to like a full-size pilot study for much longer. 7 weeks was too short, I think. But I think a 10 weeks session would be good, and also a bit more diversity in the sample would be great as well. So what I want to do now is transfer this from like the page into practice. And I think the two main things I'm going to have to, that kind of really jump out at me and that have to be addressed is, like, there's a real profound sense of dislocation and social dislodgement across the data set. So like providing like a really warm, inviting environment for women to come and experience hopefully some peer support. And the second, probably a bit of an uphill challenge for anyone who works in community singing, is convincing people to come in the first place and to come and sing, and that your voice is lovely, even if it's not, you don't think it is, you know, your voice is your own and it's really powerful. And when it comes to our babies, our voice is possibly one of the most, you know, important assets we have. So I think I'll stop now.